In 1957, when civil war seemed out of control, leaders from the two parties agreed to create a joint government called Frente Nacional or National Front, where conservatives and liberals alternated the presidency of the country every 4 years. At the same time, ministers and public employees were 50% conservative and 50% liberal. During the time of La Violencia and El Frente Nacional, hundreds of thousands of peasants migrated to the cities, offering cheap labor and creating urban slums. A first reaction against the concentration of power and wealth, and inspired by the Cuban Revolution, was the creation in the 60s and 70s of several guerrilla groups decided to take the power by force. However, they limited their main activities to isolated areas far away from the reach of the Colombian army. Another reaction from displaced peasants was to colonize new territories in the rainforest and jungles. Soon, they got an incredible opportunity to increase their income. In the early 70s, the U.S. market was eager for a product called marijuana. Traders and opportunistic dealers, profiting the strategic position and fertility of Colombia, decided that it was an ideal place to raise this crop. Soon, thousands of peasants were cultivating marijuana. They could survive, but traffickers became millionaires. In the mid-80s, marijuana was already being cultivated in the United States, so business was not so good anymore. Therefore, traffickers changed their product to cocaine and heroin. At the beginning, they used to import coca leaves from Peru and Bolivia, where they are raised legally as part of a cultural tradition. The industrial process from coca leaves to cocaine was made in small laboratories in the jungle before the cocaine paste was sent abroad. Due to international control and difficulties to smuggle coca into Colombia, traffickers decided to support the cultivation of coca plants in both the jungle and remote areas of the Andes. Cocaine business was a real boom. At the beginning of the 90s, cocaine trade was so profitable that even the main guerrilla movement, FARC, decided to use it to fund itself. Since then, money from cocaine has been the main income for guerrillas and right-wing paramilitary groups. They became real armies that jeopardized the government armed forces. Guerrillas moved near to populated areas, made mobile checkpoints on the roads, hundreds of civilians were kidnapped or killed, villages were attacked. The civil population was terrified. For the elections of 2002, an extreme right landowner, Mr. Álvaro Uribe, ran for presidency with the promise to exterminate guerrillas and to make peace with paramilitary groups. He was elected by a great majority. His mandate, called Democratic Security, was successful against guerrilla. An agreement with the USA, called Plan Colombia, allowed the consolidation of a powerful army of 500,000 men. They received elite training and were supported by satellite intelligence, warplanes, helicopters, and modern radars. At the same time, civil population protested by millions against killing and kidnapping. The FARC lost thousands of men, several leaders, and they were pushed to the jungle again. This success encouraged Mr. Uribe to run for re-election, even though he has to force Congress to modify the constitution. He was re-elected in 2006. Mr. Uribe's second presidential term was deceiving. Guerrilla was not the only problem the country had, and he failed to solve the social unrest. He directly supported new internal displacement, allowing landowners and drug traffickers to improve their control over productive lands. Today, Colombia has the second largest internally displaced population in the planet, estimated in about 4.5 million. Furthermore, during the last decade, about 2 million Colombians migrated to USA, Spain, and other Latin American countries. Corruption increased and consolidated at the highest level. Critics of the government were accused as supporters of guerrillas and terrorism. Journalists, community and trade union leaders were killed. Violations of human rights were so serious that the U.S. Congress rejected to ratify the free trade agreement with Colombia. Opposition politicians and members of the Supreme Court were illegally wiretapped by the state secret police. At the end of Uribe's term, the economy was hit very hardly due to his short-minded vision of foreign relations. Venezuela and Ecuador, two important commercial partners, broke relations with Colombia, and so the economy lost exports for about 7 billion. In spite of the constitutional mandate, Mr. Uribe wanted to run for a third presidential term, which was rejected by the Constitutional Court. In June this year, a new president was elected, Mr. Juan Manuel Santos. Even though he is a former defense minister of Mr. Uribe, he represents the industrial and financial sectors that were hardly hit by Mr. Uribe's policies. Santos took office on August the 7th. Since then, he has improved relations with Venezuela and Ecuador. His government has presented to Congress a project of law allowing the restitution of land to displaced people. He also requested the armed forces to follow 100% human rights policies. Some analysts think that Mr. Santos' policies will be rejected and attacked by the conservative sector of landowners and its political representatives. Others, like the coordination of NGOs Colombia, Europe, USA, believe that it has been only a change in the language, but the political structure will remain the same. In fact, new violations of human rights by the army were denounced last week by the media. Also, leaders of the returning communities have been recently killed. To finish, you're invited to watch 3 short videos. The first is about displaced communities in northwest Colombia. The second is a short report about illegal crops growers. And the third is a promotional video from the Ministry of Tourism. All the 3 show different but real situations of our country.